I'm Spartacus. I had to run in here and see who's Spartacusing it. Hey, Sci-Fi Dallas, thank you so much for that Spartacusy. Everybody is Spartacus. Hey, everybody. Welcome. I apologize for being a few minutes late. If I said OBS messed up literally minutes before me going live, would it surprise anyone? Anyone. I doubt that it would surprise anyone, but that's exactly what happened. I don't know if this is actually going to... this looks kind of janky, but this is the fix that I threw together at the last minute to try to get images to work. But yeah, it decided about 6:45, no, about 6:50 my time, to just go and then stop recognizing my images. So, all right, so let me say hey to everybody. RB Fox Spirit, welcome in. Welcome to the adventure. I hope that your first stream is everything that you dreamed that it could be and more. Unless you had a nightmare, because nightmares are technically dreams. I hope it's not a nightmare. Hey, Ophidia, good to see you. You're in for a good time. Thanks, Figment. I appreciate the positive reinforcement. Sci-Fi Dallas, thank you again so much for that subscription. You got... unfortunately, because I was still incoming, you missed the notification. I had to rebuild all of my Streamlabs notifications, so when someone subs, it now says their name is Spartacus. So you could have now seen Sci-Fi Dallas is Spartacus. So, here on time for once. Well, thank you for that. DJ, how are you? Hope you're feeling better. Hope that everything is working out in the right way for you. Next month. Yes, next month. And KP. Hey, KP, how's it going? Good to see you as well. Okay, so yeah, the show is Adventures in History. My name is Shane. I'm a college teacher. I have degrees in history and sociology, and we come here on chat and hang out and talk about historical stuff and and just have a good time and try to hang out with really interesting people that are open-minded and intelligent. And it's just great. It's a warm and fuzzy feeling. It's like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, but I don't have to change my cardigan when I come in. Right? So we're all neighbors wherever we are on Earth. So I hope that everybody is having a good night. After the catastrophe that was Tuesday, I spent several hours working on the computer. I ran lots of health checks. I ran system file checks. I updated drivers. I reinstalled stuff. So hopefully all of the crazy blue screen of death nonsense that we were experiencing on Tuesday night is not going to plague us again tonight. That being said, if things do go haywire, I will beg your indulgence. If things go crazy, it usually only takes about 25 to 30 seconds for me to pop back up here in the chat. If it does go on the blue screen thing, I don't know how anyone can work with computers. Well, I did IT work for quite some time, and I did it for a living. I have always, well, not always, since I was very, very young, I have been interested in computers and using computers. So I've got a background. It is not the worst thing, but I do get very stressed out. Computers are supposed to work logically, and when they don't follow logic, it makes me angry. And it's not that they're not necessarily following logic, it's that I don't understand the logic that they are following, and then it takes me a while to figure out how to fix it. So yeah, it's a bit of a sort of sticky situation, but here's hoping that everything is okay. I knew that Tuesday was going to be a little bit of a rough go because, yeah, I mean, it was the first stream of this particular show on the new PC that I had put together with assistance from friends. So yeah, it's a crazy, crazy thing. Your dad is a computer engineer, and the extent of your ability and knowledge with technology is knowing to turn it off and on again and hope that helps. It really does help, though. I know it's a trope, and if you have seen the big, not the Big Bang Theory, the IT Crowd, you'll know that "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" is a joke on the show, but it's actually... it's pretty good at fixing a majority of problems. You get your dad, yeah, just phone up dad and say, "Hey dad, fix my computer." That's what a lot of my family members want to do. I have sort of politely explained to them that I am not necessarily on call for all computer issues. Same here. You either call your dad or you call the local computer services, yeah? You love the IT Crowd. It's so good. You identify with Jen too much, though. Have you tried forcing an unexpected reboot? To be fair, your dad is your first call when you have almost any problem. Well, that's great, Sci-Fi. I'm glad that you've got that reliable rock. I lean on my parents a lot as well. Not for computer issues. Luckily for computer issues, I have 3 really, really good computer friends that are here in the chat frequently. KP and Mac and a lab coat, and another friend that's a really, really good friend of mine that shows up in the chat named Dilo, who is a great dude. Love supporting dads. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So, yeah. So the show is Adventures in History. We do things that are a little bit sort of out of the academic box. We make horrible jokes. We throw puns around. We talk about the nitty-gritty, dirty kind of stuff that happens in history, not necessarily just all the big sort of frou-frou, hoorah kind of stuff. And we cover history chronologically here on Thursday nights. So if you were with us on Tuesday night, we were doing a viewer request stream. If you come to our next viewer request stream, we'll be talking about the Empire of Mali, which is down here in Africa. Modern day country of Mali, I can turn the borders on, is this big guy right here. But in the ancient world, it's a pretty big deal. Some of the richest rulers that we know of per capita income-wise are from Mali. Especially a guy named Mansa Musa. They had hundreds of years of very important trade routes across the Sahara, so we'll be talking about them extensively on our next viewer request episode. But here on Thursday nights, we cover history chronologically. And to try to keep that as organized as possible, I have introduced phases. So currently we are in phase 7. And basically what we do is we take about a century of time, and we look at the world in snapshots of that century. So right now, we are looking at the 2nd century of the current era. So our numbers are going up now. So we're looking at the year 100 to the year 200. And we can fudge a little bit if things don't properly overlap. We won't actually go all the way till 200 tonight. We'll stop at 197. We'll actually pick up in 98. So it's not as cookie cutter, cut and dry as it might seem there. We do give ourselves a little bit of leeway. And we cover this regionally. So at the beginning of this phase, we talked about Japan and Korea. We talked about the Han Dynasty of China, some other kingdoms and empires up here, the Xiongnu and the Xianbei. We covered the height of the Kushan Empire here and discussed it spreading down to take over a large portion of northern India. Last adventure in history, we talked about the collapse of the Parthians, the once great Parthian Empire, who had at one time controlled everything basically from about here in modern-day Turkey all the way over here to what is today the Stan region. And they're in bad shape. But tonight we are going to talk about Rome, and we will get Rome to its height. The largest extent that Rome will ever cover is going to be tonight. And we'll be talking about all sorts of really interesting individuals and people that are sort of larger than life in Roman history. And I'm really looking forward to tonight. So let me catch up on the chat. Your dad's pretty awesome. That's great. I'm glad to hear that. I hope everybody has awesome dads. My computer here in Korea is so old and slow, you had your dad look at it using FaceTime, and you lost count of how many times he went, huh, that's weird. That's a great way of saying, I don't know why they did that. Usually when you're able to physically show my dad your broken whatever, it works. Yeah, and I've actually done the same thing quite recently with my wife. I was working on some stuff and said, it just won't do this. And then my wife came in to look at it, and then as soon as I turned it on, it worked perfectly. And she was like, well, I mean, at least it's fixed. But of course, that makes you feel like an idiot, right? Rome, sweet Rome. Hey, David, good to see you, my friend. Welcome, welcome. Used to have a log me in thing where you could take over the computer. Yes, but we didn't have time for some reason this time, but he's not impressed with your computer. When in Rome, do as the Romans. Wherever I wander, wherever I roam, I couldn't be fonder of my big Rome. Where the buffalo didn't roam. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Your dad's cool sometimes, but his constant lies dampen the mood. Oh, that's a bummer. The computer and I are just in cahoots. Well, if you could convince it to work properly for about the next hour and a half, that would be amazing. And we'll talk payment and extortion rates later. Oh, man. Sorry to hear that, Fox. Sorry to hear that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the Romans. So we haven't talked about Rome in a few weeks. It's actually been, I tried to look, it's been almost 2 months since we directly had a check-in on Rome. And that's sort of the way that it goes, unfortunately, with our sort of thematic phase approach to history. But we'll get back around to Rome again. You know, they've still got at least 3 more cycles in the West, and then 2 more cycles, 300 to 400 and then 400 to 500. But we'll be talking about the Byzantines until like 2023, so because they hang around until 1453, and that's gonna be a long time. Hey, Chuckslato, good to see ya. Good to see it. The computer accepts no bribes, therefore inconsolable. Oh, alas. Going to Italia, indeed. Are you actually going to Italia? Because if so, I'm jealous. Sci-Fi Dallas giving the adventure hat. Such a beautiful thing. I'll actually get to wear the adventure hat several times tonight. And I'll explain what that is when we get there so that not everybody is sort of lost. All right, so let's actually start talking. Where we last spoke about Rome, we were talking about this guy named Domitian. Domitian was a pretty horrible emperor. He had a giant ego and had a literal god complex and demanded that people worship him. And then his bodyguard killed him. They worked out a scenario and sneaked in some guy with a knife under a bandage and stabbed him to death. So, yeah. Domitian dies. Going to be a long time, Roman man. Indeed, indeed. Got a Union Army hat at Fredericksburg. Hey, that's nice. Fredericksburg was an interesting battle. If only those Union troops had not been so darn interested in those pontoons. But alas. Oh, look, the boot. It is the boot. Hey, Finesse. Good to see you. Good to see you. I know a lot. Okay, so I will admit that I know a lot. How much that is useful in a day-to-day situation is somewhat questionable. Somewhat questionable. Yeah, that whole area was pretty rich and cool in history. Indeed, that region of that part of northeastern Virginia is super neat, and I would love to go just sort of putt around there for a few days. Roman Emperor death by stabbing, as one does, as one does. All right, so yeah, I'm good at what I do as a teacher because I talk about this stuff for a living, but that doesn't mean that I can build a house or fix my house when it breaks. So right, it's not all useful. He could draw you a map of your childhood neighborhood, and he's never been there. Yeah, I can. I can show you Calumet Street and where the creek runs and where the annex is to the art place of the junior college and and the elementary school, and I could, but that's because I have this weird mind for maps, and I look at stuff and I see it once or twice and then it just sort of gets wedged up in there. Yeah, it's a weird thing. I can also tell you like a whole bunch of weird stuff about Middle Earth, which is actually, I can refer to here. We are running a follower goal. So if you are listening and you enjoy what you hear, don't feel pressured to follow. Never want to make anybody do anything that they're not interested in doing and not going to enjoy. But if you do want to follow, you can help us reach our follower goal. We're pushing towards 600. When we get to 600, we're going to have another History of Middle Earth stream. I really like Tolkien. He is probably one of my favorite fiction writer. And so I know a lot about his world, and I've read his books quite a bit. And you can see Figment just donated towards a second History of Middle Earth. So we've got 2 potential History of Middle Earth streams coming up, one for followers when we get there, and one for channel point goals if you are so inclined. There's also the Billy Joel We Didn't Start the Fire community goal running. So if you have ever heard the song We Didn't Start the Fire and you want to know what all those weird random historical references are, we can find out. We'll go through the entire song lyric by lyric and I'll give you a little bit of an explanation about what all of those are. That's actually something that the community came up with. So I'm happy to oblige our community members with neat little things like that as we go along. So let's actually talk about Rome, though. Let me make sure that I'm caught up with the chat. If you make it up here while you're still around, let me know. Sci-Fi, I seriously doubt that I'll be able to get anywhere anytime soon. Work starts for me next week. Maybe you need to go all the way back to where France made the castles. Yeah, I've been to France and I've been to some castles, so then you can learn how to make a house, right? Been there a while, but love the history, indeed. Pretty cool stuff. All right, so Rome, it's a neat place. Domitian was the emperor. He gets assassinated because, well, I mean, he was kind of a jerk. And the guy that takes over is a guy named Nerva. And you go, well, that's a kind of a horrible name. Like, what's up with this guy named Nerva? I mean, who's that guy? Well, Nerva is basically, how do I say this? He was the least unpalatable option. He was already fairly advanced in age. He rules from 96 to 98. And he's an interesting guy. So let's take a look. This is Nerva in all of his majesty. Of course, this is him as a significantly younger man. He's nervous. Yeah, so Nerva, he's an okay guy, I guess. Even if you weren't working, I get it, things are scarier again. Yes, just in time for you to come home, unfortunately, but you love it here, so you may end up living here after you retire. Oh, that's cool. Did he have a lot of nerve? Big hands. Yeah, he's a pretty big hands guy. Take a look at that statue and you tell me. Okay, so here's the deal with Nerva. When Domitian gets assassinated, there wasn't necessarily somebody right on hand. There were people that the assassins thought should be the next guy, but Nerva is actually the first choice of the Senate of Rome. Now, the Senate had been under a lot of let's say, constricting restraint since the advent of people like Julius Caesar. And especially beginning under the first emperor Augustus, the Senate had lost lots of power and lost power and lost power and lost power and lost power. And the Senate is going to try one last time with Nerva to maybe reach out and get some of that power back. But it's not really going to work too well. Again, because he's not really in the position that he needs to be. Anytime that you have an assassination, there are going to be people that are pro-assassinating the guy that just got killed and anti-assassinating the guy that just got killed. And a lot of people liked Domitian. He had a fairly loyal following, especially among the common people. So when the Senate picks Nerva, that's even a sort of a double blow against Nerva because, well, the Senate and the people of Rome have not really had the best relationship for quite some time. And this is an attempt to get back some of that power. Now, there are some accusations that Nerva actually bribed his way into this position, perhaps offering certain high-ranking individuals in the Senate favors or offering to make them certain positions. And we thought political parties were ruthless. Yeah, ancient political parties would literally stab you in public. Yeah. So the biggest issue with Nerva is that he is not popular with the military. And he is especially not popular with a particular group called the Praetorian Guard. And the Praetorian Guard was effectively the bodyguard of the emperor. So the emperor's bodyguards don't really like the emperor very much. So how do you handle that if you're the emperor and your bodyguard doesn't care for you so much? Well, he tries to bribe them. There is this sort of established... What am I trying to say here? There is a custom that has begun. And this started with the Emperor Claudius, where when you become emperor, you make a donation to the Praetorian Guard. It's called a donative. And Nerva gives a donative, but it's sort of a puny donative. And the Praetorian are just not really that big on him. So there's another problem with Nerva, and that is he did not have an heir, even though he was pretty old. And the military was really worried that if he died without an heir, there was going to be a civil war, right? Because if there wasn't a clear person to take over, there might be several different people that go, oh, well, you know, we're the emperor, you should let us take over. And that would, of course, then involve fighting and war. And the military doesn't want to fight themselves. But that's inevitably what would happen in a big civil war, right? So they sort of come at Nerva rather bluntly and say, here's the deal, man. You're going to adopt one of us. You're going to formally adopt this guy named Trajan. And he's going to be your heir. And you're going to recognize this now. Like, you're not going to dilly-dally around. You're already ancient. You're going to pick this guy. He is going to be your heir. We have picked him for you. This is the way that you get to stay alive. And if the leadership of the Praetorian Guard tells you you're either going to do this or we're going to kill you, you take their word for it because they had already killed a couple of emperors. They were not really in this for giggles. They're coming after you. So Nerva is going to adopt Trajan, and Trajan is going to be the big dude. Now, it's important here for us to make a certain distinction And if we look back in ancient texts, we start seeing references, even in the ancient texts, to the 5 good emperors. These are good emperors. They're all good people. They all do the right thing. They fix Rome. They put Rome back together. And Nerva sort of gets lumped into the 5 good emperors, mostly because he doesn't want to get assassinated. So when he adopts Trajan, he very formally adopts Trajan. And I've mentioned this before, but if you've not been in the stream before to know this, but when you adopted somebody in Rome, this was a very, very real sort of adoption. It wasn't like, today where we just take your last name. You were considered literally their blood. And they had political ceremonies where you were legally and formally introduced. Your name was changed publicly. But there were also religious ceremonies where you got introduced to the family gods, and the family gods had to then know that you were part of the family so that they could take care of you. And you were expected to honor the family gods of the family that you had become adopted into. So this was a very real situation where Trajan was literally at that point, for all intents and purposes, except for genetics, Nerva's son. Let me guess, Caligula's on this list, right? No. Caligula's been dead for, at this point, about 60 years. Oh yeah, it's serious adoption. It is all full-out adoption. And Nerva starts this because, again, he's going to be the one that adopts Trajan. Did he do this willingly? Absolutely not. Did he do this to keep his head? Oh yeah, absolutely. About how old was Trajan when he was adopted? He was in his 20s. I think he was 23, 24. He was a younger guy. So he's got a lot of, kind of pluck. He's got a good military background behind him, and he is very well liked by the troops. So the 5 good emperors are the ones that we're about to talk about. So there's Nerva. Let's talk about Trajan. And I guess I can show you Trajan. This is Trajan, and I will put on my adventure hat when I show you this bust here of Trajan. This is a bust that you can go see if you want to go hang out in some Roman museums. I took that photo, so for those of you that are not aware, this is the lovely adventure hat, and when it makes appearance, if you have those lovely emotes, you can throw those little adventure hats into the chat. Boom. So I wear this when I go out and do archaeological, historical stuff. And when I talk about a thing that I have seen with my own eyes or a place that I've been directly, I get to wear the adventure hat. So there we are. All right. So Trajan, what's up with this guy? Well, I guess I should put he rules from 98 to 117. So not the longest of reigns, but a decent one. So Trajan, when he takes over, is going to be a very different kind of emperor. Nerva had stayed exclusively in Rome. Part of this was because, again, he was kind of old and not necessarily up for running around the whole world. But Trajan is not the same. He is very energetic. He is very interested in solving some of the problems along the Roman borders. And the biggest of the issues at the moment was sitting right here. Now, today, if we zoom in, we know that this region is, I can show you the borders. This is Romania and Bulgaria and Serbia. This region right here in the ancient world was called Dacia. And there were some really, really interested people that the Romans would have called barbarians living in this area that were called the Dacians. And they had been pressing on the borders of the Roman Empire along the Danube River. So the Danube River runs right along here. It's a natural border that runs through Europe. So these Dacians had been making strikes into Roman territory. They had been sort of causing issues down here in the world of the Greeks. And the Greeks, even this far into history, the Greek region here had been part of Rome at this juncture for almost 200 years. Even so, the Greeks still thought very much that they were superior to the Romans. And the Greeks really didn't like the idea of the Romans conquering them or ruling them. There were still a lot of people in Greece that would be just as happy if, the Romans sort of just shoved off and left the Greek cities alone. But the Greek cities made an awful lot of money for the Romans, and there was basically 0% chance that they were going to do that. So when these Dacians began attacking and causing trouble here in the Balkan Peninsula, well, it's time to go handle some business, right? And Trajan is going to show up with a really, really big army. And this is going to begin what's called the Dacian campaign. This is going to last several years during the early part of Trajan's reign. And he is going to take it to the Dacians. And there are a few different phases of this war. The problem that Trajan was running into early on in the war in 99, 100, 101 or so in that area was that the Dacians would not necessarily meet him in big open battle. They knew that they could sort of retreat further up into the hills, and that Trajan didn't necessarily have the supplies necessary to sort of run up into the hills to catch them. There was a big Dacian king at this time, a guy named Decebalus, who became sort of the anti-Trajan, if you will. They were the Richard III to the Salahadin, or the Rommel to the Eisenhower. They were rivals that respected each other a great deal. They were both very capable military leaders. But at the end of the day, Rome has an immense amount of soldiers. They have an incredibly well-trained and well-equipped army. And by the time that Decebalus understands what's really happening, Trajan had loaded up one of the largest armies that Europe had ever seen and invaded into Dacia and chased them up into the hills and managed to basically lay siege to several of their cities, completely wreck several of the Dacian cities, to the point that Dacia was utterly conquered and the Dacians had to surrender. And at this point, well, this whole region here gets annexed by Trajan into the Roman Empire. And I should note, this area is going to be problematic because you might defeat the Dacians, but without killing every single one of them, they're still going to be there, right? Now, moving a little bit further to the east, there's an ancient kingdom right here referred to as Armenia. Now, the modern-day country of Armenia is right about here, and it's fairly small compared to what it was in the ancient world. It's very large in the ancient world, this sort of whole region right here. And the kingdom of Armenia was under a bit of a weird relationship between Rome itself, the Armenians, and the kingdom or the empire of Parthia, which was based over here with capitals in Mesopotamia. And the Parthians, during this period of time, were losing ground and losing influence, and decided that they needed to sort of make some big gesture to show that they were still in the game. And this is going to spark a war here in Armenia. And this is going to become a pretty big problem for Trajan because, well, you can't have your client kingdoms falling to the bad guys. You have to go beat down the bad guys. And so here comes Trajan. Once again, he's going to bring a very large army with him. He's going to conquer Armenia, and he actually decides that the best thing to do, instead of leaving Armenia as this independent country, is to basically absorb Armenia, turn it into a Roman province. That way there's no doubt whose side it's on. But he's not going to stop there. He's actually going to go ahead and push further south and invades the heartland of the Parthian Empire. he sacks two of their capital cities. The Parthians had several really, really big cities where they pressed money and made coins and things like that. But the big capital is this place called Ctesiphon, which gets sacked, and Mesopotamia gets turned into a Roman province. And it's at this point, which is in 116, the year 116, that Rome hits what we would call its maximum point. And Trajan starts going back home, and well, we'll talk about that in just a second. So Trajan dies in 117. And when he dies in 117, the Empire of Rome is the biggest that it had ever been and will ever be. And let's take a look at that. You all know that I love maps. You aren't going to get out of here without seeing a map. Here we go. So look at how big Rome is. Great googly moogly. We've got people everywhere. So here is Dacia that had been conquered. We've got the Kingdom of Armenia as a province. We've got Mesopotamia. Oh, I forgot to mention. Trajan also conquers and finally ends the Kingdom of Nabatea. We talked about the Nabateans several times. Region right around here, which had been a kingdom at this point for about 450 to 500 years, is finally going to fall to the Romans. As far up here into Britain as the ancient region is called Caledonia, we would today call this Scotland. But look at how big this empire is. At the time, it was the largest empire in the Western Hemisphere. You could argue about whether or not the Han Dynasty at this point controlled as much or more land as Rome. They probably controlled more square mileage, but population is a hard thing to guess at, and money is a much harder thing to guess at. This is a really big empire, though. And if you've been around the stream, you will know that this is basically the region that we have been talking about an awful lot in ancient history. Egypt, Mesopotamia, Turkey, Greece. This is a big, big empire. And it's a big, important empire. So I mentioned Trajan dying in 117. I'll actually put the adventure hat back on again, and we can get some more adventure hat emotes. I shared this image last time we talked about Parthia, just because it's one of my favorite images of me. But also because it's got an extra meaning tonight. So I'll show you the place where Trajan died. It's in Turkey. Here's the image. This building right here is called a cenotaph. This is, of course, me. Beautiful image. And this picture here is going to make a lot of sense just a little bit later on in the stream, chronologically speaking. Anyway, so this is where he died. This is in a modern-day city in Turkey, and you can go hang out there. Pretty cool stuff. The photographer did a great job. Yeah, that was my dear friend and colleague and historical mentor, a guy named Dan Browning, who's an excellent historian, has taught me so much over the course of my life. You took that picture? Did I take credit for that? Because Browning gave me that picture. Did he get it from you? Sorry, Figment, I didn't know. I thought Browning took that photo. Oh, okay, well, Browning stole it, and I'll go ahead and tell you, he took full credit of that. He took full credit. No, he gave me that photo. Like, it came off of his camera. He might have taken the same picture. Okay, maybe he did. I don't know. I can go back and look at the metadata, but he's the one that gave me that photo. Anyway, Figment was with me on that trip. It was one of the greater historical trips that I've ever been on. We had a great time. And when Figment gets back to the States and gets back to a computer that is not so crazy, maybe I'll try to convince Figment to maybe hop on Discord and we can have a special stream where we walk through some of the stuff that we did while we were in Turkey and share goofy little anecdotes. Maybe that'll be a fun stream. I don't know if anybody's interested in that, but I think that might be fun. All right, so anyway, Trajan dies. And being dead, well, you know, it stinks. You stand by your statement about the photographer. Figment, I believe you wholeheartedly, I do. But Browning told me that he took that picture. All right, this guy. Who is this guy? Well, this guy is the Emperor Hadrian. He is the next of the 5 good emperors. Hadrian. I need to change my notes here. It's like Adrian, but with an H. What's going on here? Oh, man, my computer's doing that flashy thing again. Last time it did the flashy thing, it started crashing on me. I hope that's not going to be the case. We'll all cross our fingers. All right. The statement applied to DBLs. Okay. Oh, I gotcha. Okay, cool. Anyway, yes. Well, let's not let's not flip the table. we don't want to anger the computer. We want to appease the computer. If there's any counter curses that might be uttered over the computer as a way to soothe its anger, you rule by fear. Machiavelli would approve. Anyway, so Hadrian. You'll be in your area the 3rd week of October, so maybe we can do something then for stream. Oh, well, yeah. I forgot that you're actually coming here. Yeah, we could talk about that. That'd actually be that would be super neat. Okay, where are we? Hadrian, yes. Okay, so Hadrian, before Trajan dies, he doesn't actually have an heir either. He's a younger guy. By the way, Trajan died from a sickness, an illness that he caught while he was on adventure. This happens an unfortunately large amount of time. You start traveling around the world, you run into things that you're not used to, and then, well, you know, you die from it. So Trajan died. He was rather young, did not have an heir. However, he had adopted Hadrian. So he's carrying on this idea of, let's make sure that we know who the heir is. We don't want to tick off anybody. We don't want to have a big civil war. And I should note, Trajan was not just a warmonger. He also did a lot of things that really went to work towards the stability of Rome. For example, he was a very savvy litigator and law writer, and he did a lot of stuff in legal reforms to try to help make sure that the provinces of Rome were running the way that they should. And this is partially because he was over in the east so much and saw how a lot of the provinces were being handled, and then goes, no, we need to butt some heads and give some people some black eyes and make some feelings get hurt, but we're going to straighten all this stuff out. He was also a just really, really popular guy. He did not overspend. Even the wars that he went on were profitable ventures. He had a lot of support, not just among the military, but also the people. The Senate, of course, was sort of not so hot on him, but, you know, guess what? The Senate doesn't like any strong emperor that's going to be able to rule without their, say-so. So they're not going to like most emperors, just as a note. But Trajan was a pretty good guy. Hadrian, though, Hadrian is something special. When Hadrian comes around, this guy is going to make such a mark on the history of Rome that he actually becomes part of a saying. When Romans later on in history would wish people luck, they would say, like, I hope you have the luck of Augustus, but the profit of Hadrian. Because Augustus did have a lot of really big lucky turns to get into his position. But Hadrian was the guy that really fixed things, that turned Rome into a profitable thing, that made the system work. And he was remembered for that. And he is remembered amongst Roman historians incredibly favorably. And when I say Roman historians here, I mean people in the ancient world that wrote about Rome. People like Dio Cassius, who's one of our largest sources from this period of time. Hadrian is almost universally praised for his administrative capabilities, for his leadership capabilities, for his understanding of how to run a bureaucracy. This guy is a big, big deal. So, right off the bat, when he becomes emperor in 117 after the death of Trajan, he understood that Rome had become too big. It was just too big to manage. The population had grown too high. They had all these border zones that were potential hotbeds for rebellion. So what he is going to do is actually something that initially sounds bad, but turns out to be really good. And that is, he gives up territory. And you go, wait. When is a Roman going to give up territory? Isn't that a sign of weakness? Isn't that a sign of like running away or abandoning? No. Hadrian understood, for example, over here in Mesopotamia, like he knew these Parthians aren't going to just let us hold Mesopotamia. They're going to come back after it. So he goes, you know what? Just let them have it. Just let them have it. Just give it back. We'll strategically withdraw. We will sort of look the other way as they take back over. Just let them have it. Here in Armenia, he knew that there were a lot of Armenians that were sort of chafing under Roman conquest. And he goes, we need to let Armenia be independent again. Just let them go. Just let them go. So Armenia becomes independent again, and they reestablish the Arsacid dynasty of Armenia. Over here in Dacia, he recognizes, you know what? These Dacians, we're probably not going to be able to hold them. And this upper region, we'll just kind of let it go. If they invade, we're just not going to fight for it too much. We'll just withdraw. It's a Mesopotamia. I love it. So when he's doing this, it's actually a pretty hard sell to some people. Because when you're the emperor, you're not supposed to be giving stuff up. You're supposed to be taking things, right? Big man, take things, bash bad guy with stick. Not, okay, let's assess our situation, realize that we're tactically overdrawn, and maybe pull back a little bit. And this is where we're actually going to get to the title of our stream, because he is going to focus on something that are called limes. Now, I know this looks like limes, but it is pronounced limes. And Hadrian understands that there are natural boundaries that should be recognized to the Roman Empire. For example, the Euphrates River, the southern part here of Mesopotamia, he goes, you know what? That should sort of be our boundary. We'll keep things in this area, but let's just kind of withdraw back to there. The Danube here in the Balkans, maybe we should just kind of, pull back a little bit and let this natural limes. By the way, limes is singular. I don't know, it has an S on it, and people are like, what? That no, it can't be. The plural is limitates. It's where we get the word limit from. And by the way, this is also the title, Going Ridin on the Limes of Rome. And I hope you all get that song. If you don't know who Aretha Franklin is, you should probably go Google that. I also hope that you're now singing Freeway of Love in your head, by the way. So Hadrian recognizes we need to do some stuff. We need to limit ourselves. We need to pull back a little bit. We need to organize ourselves. And we also need to make some fences. We need to make some borders where there aren't necessarily natural borders. And the most famous one of those is here in England. And what is somewhat ironic, or perhaps ironic is not the right word for it, perhaps fortuitous, earlier today, one of our friends posted a link in the Discord. By the way, if you're not already part of the Discord, you're welcome to join the Discord, where we talk about history stuff. And we share memes and goof a lot about, nerd stuff. But there was an article this morning about some people in England that were working on putting in some new water pipes that discovered part of what's called Hadrian's Wall, which I can show you a big section of here. Now, I know a lot of people think Hadrian's Wall, oh wow, Hadrian's Wall's got to be like a bajillion feet tall. It wasn't. Not all of it was this giant wall that you couldn't see over. A lot of it was just a natural boundary wall. This, by the way, I chose this particular picture because of this thing. This thing is a mile fort. So once every mile, you would have one of these little towers that was designed to watching this stretch of the wall. And really what this wall was supposed to do is be a physical, visual boundary. It's not supposed to be some insurmountable concept. And let's be honest, people traded back and forth between these areas all the time. Now, if you go to some parts of the wall, it is really, really tall. Places where there were really frequent battles, you do have some big, larger fortifications. That's a good wall. You like that wall. It's well built, a pile of rocks, and you love it. Right, exactly. So Hadrian's Wall is a physical limes. It's one of these things where he goes, this is where we stop. Rome is south. All of you Caledonians are north. And at this point, they were Picts and some Angles and sort of, again, under this larger term of Caledonians. So Hadrian's really smart. He's doing this on purpose. What else does he do? Well, he doesn't spend a lot of time in Rome. Hadrian sees more of the empire than any other emperor before him. He goes to almost every single province. And while he's touring, he is looking at how these provinces are being run. Now, again, we talked about Trajan making some changes as to how this stuff operates. Hadrian didn't want to just trust that this was happening. He wanted to look at it with his own eyeballs. He wanted to see how people were running things. He wanted to witness the operation of the empire. And honestly, I can't express to you how important this was to making some of these new, especially these border regions, feel like they were Roman. One of the largest pulls of the Roman Empire was this draw to Romanize. And the Roman government recognized this right off the bat and incentivized you to Romanize. How better do you feel like a Roman than if the emperor of the entire empire comes to stay in your little city? How crazy is that? If you live in the Syria province, every time a Roman emperor comes through, he's really just coming through to fight. He's not coming through to look around and hang out and stay. Some of these provinces had not had an emperor come to them since they had been conquered. And here comes Hadrian, who did not conquer them, but he's flexing this Romanitas, this presence of the Romans. You would volunteer to go with his group? Yeah, me too. That would be a great trip. Like, travel around with the emperor, with a giant bodyguard, of course, because he's got his Praetorian Guard with him that's keeping him safe. And he's got several other military units as well that are following him around. And see the entire Roman Empire. Just go hang around. And now I'm sort of kicking myself because I have photos of two different arches that were built in Hadrian's honor. There's one over here in a city called Caesarea Magna over here in Turkey, and then there's another one down here in Jordan, a place called Gadara. These cities knew that Hadrian was coming, right? He would tell them, like, I'm going to come visit your city next year. And they would get really excited, and they would build these triumphal archways and build new entrances to their city so that Hadrian could come enter through Hadrian's Arch. And this was a big, big deal. This is sort of like hosting the Olympics. You know, when you see the opening ceremony of the Olympics, the countries that are the host go all out and tell you, look at our culture. We've built these cool new buildings that we're not really going to use very much anymore. But look at all of the cool stuff that is uniquely us. Well, this is what's happening when Hadrian's touring around. All of these people in, you know, Egypt, and people in Jordan, and people in what is modern day Israel and Lebanon and Syria and Turkey. These people are getting super excited. The emperor's coming to see us. He's coming to our town. So that's a pretty big deal. Hadrian, again, is remembered as one of the greatest emperors in the history of the Roman Empire. He is going to be a little bit anxious about whom he should adopt. Now, he's going to continue the habit. He's the third of the 5 good emperors. He's going to adopt someone. And the guy that he picks is this guy named Antoninus Pius. At the time, he's just called Antoninus. And when he says, I want to pick Antoninus, Antoninus, by the way, had been a politician, had a lot of experience with what we might consider executive command. He had been in charge of some of the military units. He had been in charge of a couple of the provinces as a governor. So he had, you know, the qualities that you would need. But he didn't uniformly meet all the boxes for all of the different factions. So Hadrian really thinks Antoninus is going to be the guy, but the way that he finally convinces everybody to get behind Antoninus is that Hadrian is also going to organize the next generation, right? So he's going to adopt Antoninus as long as Antoninus then adopts a guy named Marcus and a guy named Varus. And we'll talk about them in just a little bit. But unfortunately for everyone, even the greatest emperors, death creeps up and gets you. He dies in 138, and I get to put the adventure hat back on for a third time. A third adventure hat. Dun 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 dun. Ba-ba-da-ba. And I'm going to show you where he was buried. And you can still go see this. So this is the best picture that I have of it. Unfortunately, the day that I took this picture, it was raining like mad. But this big thing right here, and by the way, you can't really see it square on. This is the Castello di San Angelo, or the Castle of the Angels. But when it was originally built, this was built as a tomb for Hadrian. And I was going to just zoom in. Here, no, not Perugia. Okay. I was just going to zoom in here on Google Earth and show you how big this thing is. So the big fort that is built around it is actually a much more modern addition. But this thing right here is the tomb, and it is absolutely enormous. Now, the reason it's called the Castle of the Angels is that there's a particular period of time where somebody's invading Rome. This is much later in history than in the medieval period. I'm sorry, the Renaissance period. And there were a bunch of angels that appeared to people and actually, well, maybe we can just do this. Oh, they don't let you walk down it. Well, maybe we can go right here to where I was when I took that picture. There are great little statues of biblical figures. There we go. So this is where where Hadrian gets buried. It's a really cool place. And unfortunately, we did not get to go inside when we were there. Again, it was raining, and the building was actually closed on the random day that we were there. Unfortunately, when you go to places that are not in the United States, the idea of Saturday and Sunday being the weekend doesn't line up, and a lot of places close on Tuesdays or Wednesdays or Mondays, and sometimes they close and you don't really know when they're closed. It's kind of a messy thing. Ooh, why are you flickering, Google Earth? Okay, just don't crash. All right, so Hadrian, great dude, cool person, but dies. Pius. Antoninus Pius is our next emperor, and he rules from 138 to 161. All right, so I guess I should show you Antoninus Pius. This guy. Check that out. Looks like a pretty cool guy. Well kempt. Nice beard. No hat. But, you know, we can forgive him for that. He's got a very nice tunic. So Antoninus is our fourth of the 5 good emperors. And he's a pretty cool guy. Now, when he takes over, Rome is in a really, really good state. Right? People were uniformly happy. The boundaries were firm. The enemies of Rome knew that Rome was in a dominant military position, and the coffers were full. And man, the reign of Antoninus Pius is going to be one of the most golden ages of Rome. It is so peaceful that he never has to leave Italy. There is not a serious enough threat for him to even leave Italy. He just stays there the whole time of his reign. And if you have been with us on previous streams where we've talked about Rome, that is inconceivable. Previous to this particular point. Antoninus Pius is very, very good with money. He does a lot of monetary reforms. He is going to change some tax structures, and he's going to be a very wise spender. Now, even though he builds a lot of stuff, he still leaves this enormous surplus of money. By the time that his reign is done, he's something like 20 million sesterces up, which it's a ridiculously large amount of money. This would be like having a government surplus of $200 billion or something like that. You know, when's the last time the United States has had a surplus? It's been under Bill Clinton back in the 90s, right? He has this enormous surplus because he's so good with it. But one of the things that he focuses on during this time of peace is fixing the functional parts of Rome. And when I say functional parts, what I'm talking about here is the infrastructure. And I know that if you've been watching the news or have lived in the United States, one of the big words that's getting thrown around a lot recently is infrastructure. We need to fix the bridges, and we need to fix the sewers, and we need to fix the roads. Well, guess what? Those are literally things that Antoninus Pius focuses on. He wants to rebuild aqueducts, -0, -9. Antoninus Pius. Ha 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 ha. Well done, Vern. That's a good one. It took me a while. I was like, what? And then I had to like squint. The little ant guy was sort of showing up like a dog. And I was like, what is that, a dog? That's great. Well played, sir. Good to see you, Vern. How are you today? Hope you're having a good one. Antoninus Pius. Yep, that's him. The pizza pie. Which is ironic and perfect for Italy as well. Even though the tomato didn't get to Italy until like the 1500s. Sorry. Didn't want to ruin anybody's world. Does that mean that white sauce is inherently more Italian than red sauce in Italy? Them's fighting words in some circles. You start getting into the parts of Italy that are white sauce parts of Italy, and you start saying that red sauce is better than white sauce. Yeah, that's fighting words. And for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, there are regions of Italy where tomato-based sauces are much more prevalent, and other ones where you are going to much more have cream or cheese-based sauces. So stuff like your Alfredos, as opposed to your marinaras, if you will. You did, thanks. That's the thing about history. It's the facts. It might not be what you want it to be, but it's the facts. So Antoninus is going to fix the bridges. He's going to be really interested in waterways and drinking water. And some of the most lasting examples of aqueducts and bridges that exist, that are still around in the Roman Empire, are built during his reign. This is really sort of the apex of Roman what we might call architectural engineering stuff. These guys are masters, and I now realize that I should have thrown in pictures of aqueducts that I've been to, and I think of these things in the middle of me talking instead of, prior to the actual show, when I don't have to spend 5 minutes digging through the 7,000 to 8,000 photos that I have to find stuff. Anyway, Antoninus Pius, really great guy. He lives a really long time. Again, is pretty well liked. I should note where the Pius comes from. He was really big on religious services and sort of getting Rome back to its religious foundation. There's going to be renovations on a lot of the big temples in Rome during his reign. There are also going to be lots of temples built during his period as emperor. And you can still see some remains of some of those in Rome today if you go visit. Antoninus Pius is in one of the weirdest situations. And I've always found this really interesting. I guess I could ask this. How many of our viewers could have told me anything about Antoninus Pius prior to the stream tonight? And I would even suggest that if you don't know anything other than I knew his name and he was an emperor, that doesn't necessarily count. So did anybody have any knowledge of this guy prior to us talking about him tonight? And I would be willing to bet that most people probably had never heard of this guy before, even in passing. And part of that is because he was just so good. He was just so good at what he did that there wasn't anything to remember. Right? Like, even good things in the past. Like, let's think of like really good presidents of the United States. We think Abraham Lincoln was a great president. Well, what was going on? Well, the Civil War. Okay. Was that why he was a great president? Probably had a lot to do with it. George Washington. We remember him because he was a great president, but he was the first president, right? What about the really good presidents that did good stuff that we don't really know or remember very much about? Like, who knows Millard Fillmore? Or Calvin Coolidge? Right, you've probably heard these names if you've been around the United States or grown up in school in the States. But do you know what happened during their reign or during their terms as presidency? This is sort of the curse of being such a good leader in such a peaceful time. You get sort of overshadowed. Because even Hadrian, who lived during peaceful times, did this awesome flexing trip of the entire world and built all of these cool things and did all this cool stuff. But Antoninus Pius built more than Hadrian did and had a bigger surplus of money at the end of his reign than Hadrian did and ruled longer than Hadrian did. But he's sort of like, Antoninus Pius, It is what it is, and sometimes history doesn't remember the coolest stuff. Or sometimes historians don't remember the coolest stuff. I think Antoninus Pius is a cool guy. One of the more successful of the 5 emperors. All right, so let's talk about the next 2 guys. Now, if you will remember, as a contingency of people getting behind Antoninus Pius as a choice for the next emperor, Antoninus Pius had to adopt 2 guys, Marcus and Lucius Verus. Now, we remember Marcus today as Marcus, I can't spell. That's supposed to be Aurelius. I'm beginning to think living in interesting times is not a good thing, as I'd like to cancel my subscription to Living in Miss Rona Times. Thanks. Marcus Arugula. Yeah, he was big on vegetarian diets and keeping yourself regular. Scandals will always be more interesting, sadly. Right. And even in the ancient times, the scandals are the things that the ancient historians like to write about. Like if you read Tacitus, or if you read Suetonius, the stories that they put about that they wrote down about the early emperors are the scandals. Like, that guy had a crush on his sister, or that guy was a pervert. And these are the stories that people write down because, Kale Marcus. Oh, well played there. I appreciate that. All right, so again, Antoninus Pius, as a contingency for getting selected by Hadrian, had to subsequently adopt Marcus and Lucius Verus. So when Antoninus Pius dies, there's actually going to be a moment where right before his death, he tried to convince Marcus to take sole imperiorship. Basically, I want you to be the full emperor. I don't really want Lucius Verus to be a co-emperor with you. And to his credit, Marcus said, nope, that's not the plan, and that's not the deal. The deal was you would adopt us both. I won't take it if you don't give us co-equal powers. And a lot of people go, hey man, that Marcus dude, that was a real bro move, dude. Like, you stepped up, you stood up for your adopted brother. That was a cool move. Now, I would like to point out that if we look at the period of time where Marcus and Lucius ruled at the same time. So this is from 161 to 169. This, by the way, the first time the Roman Empire had co-emperors. So they're both going to be emperor at the same time. Now, here's the catch. Only one of them is going to be Pontifex Maximus. So Pontifex Maximus, again, it literally means the Great Bridge. The Pontifex Maximus was the highest priest in the Roman religion, and it could only be held by one person, and Marcus Aurelius has it. Now, this had become sort of synonymous with the position of emperor. Augustus had been Pontifex Maximus. Emperors subsequent to him had been Pontifex Maximus. So they're both emperors, but Marcus has the priesthood. So everybody kind of gets that he's kind of the leading emperor. Also, during the time that they ruled together, the 8 years that they ruled together, Marcus basically sat in Rome and wrote philosophy. while Varus is out doing all of the killing. But let me show you photos. This is Marcus Aurelius. This is him later on in life. If you have seen the movie Gladiator, you will know this guy. We'll talk about those wars in just a second, actually. So this is Marcus Aurelius. This is Lucius Verus. Very powerful looking figure with lots of curls. But yeah, Lucius Verus. Marcus really did say, nah, I'm a chill here. Yeah, he really did. He really did. Lucius looks like he could snap your neck with a glare. He kind of had that gravitas to him. He was... I've got a puppy crawling around under the table here, begging for attention. Anyway, so they're going to co-rule. They take over in 161, and Marcus is... Yeah, that beard. He has a pretty great beard. Not so much of a mustache, but an imposing beard. Marcus is basically going to say, all right, I'm going to stay home and write philosophy. If we have trouble, Lucius, you can go handle the trouble. And they had trouble. In 161, the guy that was the emperor of Parthia, this guy named Volgases IV, decided that he was going to once again invade Armenia. And that didn't go so great for the Romans because the Romans weren't really expecting any sort of attack. So when Volgases invaded, it was pretty sudden and kind of crazy. So much so that the Romans actually lost a fair amount of territory in Syria and Upper Mesopotamia. And Marcus was like, all right, Lucius, go get them. And so here comes Lucius Verus, going off to fight a war against Parthia from 161 to 166. This is why he said no to taking full responsibility. He was good to chill at home with the books. Yeah. Doesn't it make sense, though? Like, hey, look, I don't want to be just the sole emperor. I like this idea of hanging around in Italy like Antoninus Pius did, and I just want to kind of chill out here and run the administrative side of things, and if we need a beat stick, I've got another guy I can just send. But to his credit, Verus was a really good commander and won a lot of really big battles and came home to triumphs and was a hero. I mean, he was very well loved by the troops. He was a pretty big deal. Now, he wasn't, again, the super emperor. He was just shoot off to war. Go fight the Parthians. Go, peasant. Like, anti-emperor? No. I'm the Pontifex Maximus, and the gods will it. The gods will it. Yes. Go fight. So, as soon as the war with the Parthians is over, so this is 161 to 166, Parthia gets defeated. Verus gets down into Mesopotamia again, once again sacks the capital cities of the Parthians down here, Ctesiphon, just messes them up pretty badly. But as he's coming out, Verus gets sick. Yep. So he's sick, but the army is actually the problem, because the army is sick too. And the army has the plague. Bum ba da bum. Just when you thought it was okay to go to Mesopotamia, you bring back the plague. So Verus gets a little sick, but manages to sort of get himself back together. The army's got plague in it. There are a lot of soldiers that sort of have to kind of sit basically out for a while. How I imagine that conversation went down. You're also the emperor, and like, Lucius, come on, you know me. I'm not good with the sword. I'm good with the books. Why don't you just go do the war thing? Because you know you're good at the The pew pew stabby stab thing. Not the plague. Yeah, the plague. Woo! The plague. Indeed. You stabby stabby, I ready. By the way, there are whole volumes of Marcus Aurelius's philosophy that are still around. They're called the Meditations, one of the more important Stoic philosophical books that's out there. So if you're into Stoic philosophy, you should go hang out in the Meditations. You can find these for free online, or you can get one of various copies of them that have been published and translated multiple times. And Lucius rolls in with his eyes like, fine, I'll go to war. Yeah, so Parthia gets defeated in 166, but then a new group shows up. And this group are the Germans. And there were a lot of Germanic people groups here in Europe that were moving their way into this border zone. So the limes, the borders, are the Danube River and then the Rhine River. Now, Rome had some territory out here, sure, but these natural limes were sort of fallback points. This is where they needed to make sure that they held. And it didn't hold. The Germans are going to start invading here in the Balkan Peninsula, and Varus has to go fight them. Varus is going to fight them for 3 years until he succumbs to the plague. So in 169, Lucius Verus is going to die, and that is going to leave Marcus Aurelius alone as emperor. And now Marcus doesn't have an option. He has to go out and fight, because the invasion in the Balkan Peninsula turned pretty bad. And the barbarians in question, these Germanic barbarians, are going to get way down into the Greek homeland. They get all the way down here to a city called Eleusis, which is right about here, just north of Athens. Eleusis is home to one of the most important ancient Western sects, the Eleusinian Mysteries. This cult that held these rites that you had to become initiated into. People claimed that after being initiated into this, they understood the way that the world worked. Eleusis was a really big, really important religious center. It was theorized that if the yearly rites at Eleusis were not conducted, that the world might literally end. And the Germanic barbarians destroy all the temples at Eleusis. This is a big deal then. So Aurelius packs up and has to go to war. And he spends the rest of his reign, which is the year... so he rules by himself from 169 to 180. The rest of his reign he spends on this border fighting barbarians. And they're pretty big and bad and scary. And this takes multiple efforts. It's not just something that happens once and then they go away. There are 4 different big wars fought against these barbarians. If you've seen the movie Gladiator, you'll know that in the opening sort of scenes, you see this sort of aged Marcus Aurelius out on the battlefield in this locked, drawn competition with these Germanic invaders. This is that time. And it's a beautiful place with a good entrance to hell. Yeah, it does have an entrance to hell there if you're interested in gates to the underworld, Eleusis. I really wanted to go to Eleusis, but I did not have enough time when I was in Greece. Partially because things had fallen through, and partially because, well, we won't get into all of that. Germans. Pretty sure these are my peeps. This is pretty crazy stuff. And it's really scary. Because if we think about the time period that we're talking about, 169 to 180, there had been an entire generation of Romans that had born and grown up under absolute peace. There had been a generation that had born, grown up, and died. Right? If you were, let's say you were born in the year 116, when the big war with Parthia and Trajan ended. So if you were born in 116, at this point, you would be 53 years old. 53 years old. That's an entire life that you had spent in the height of Roman peace. And now you have Germanic invaders that are not only invading, they're wrecking cities that nobody had attacked in centuries. These Germanic people invade Italy. They invade the actual territory of Italy. That had not been done for centuries. This is crazy. And people freak out. Were they the Pepsi generation? No, I don't think so. I think Romans would probably be Coke people. I know they really like Fanta, and that's technically owned by Coca-Cola. Well, at least it is in the United States. It used to be Coca-Cola. But I know from my travels in Italy, I don't know if I've ever seen a Pepsi in Italy. I'm not trying to say that it doesn't exist over there. But Coke is much bigger in the Mediterranean world than Pepsi is. Technically Nazi Cola. Oh yeah, Fanta. So the story is that the Nazi leadership in Germany was sort of sketchy about any American-based company owning a lot of material and employing a lot of people and spending a lot of money inside of Germany and the rise of Nazi power. So they sort of took over Coca-Cola bottling and production stuff inside of Germany and just changed the name of it to Fanta. And that's actually where Fanta comes from. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's like the 30-second version of it. All right. So Aurelius spends the rest of his life fighting against these barbarians. And he does manage to repel the Germans, but the cost is incredibly high. The surplus that Antoninus Pius had built up gets spent on the military and refortification and basically supplying these big wars that go on for decades. And this is why Marcus Aurelius is the last of the 5 good emperors. Because things after him, well, let's just say they go awry. And they start going awry with his son, who is this guy. This guy's name is Commodus. And if you've seen Gladiator, the guy that Joaquin Phoenix plays is Commodus. Did these barbarians discover how nice the Alps were and party there instead? They discovered how rich Roman cities were and decided that they wanted all of that cool stuff. Now, I will note before we leave that Commodus here is dressed up as Hercules. He is wearing the lion skin and carrying the big club. These are traditional symbols of Hercules. And he is depicted as such because he thought that he was the reincarnation of Hercules. Yeah. Commodus. What can I say about this guy? Well, I can say a lot about this guy. So, first off, this is not Marcus Aurelius's first son. There had been other sons previous that had died, and there had been plans on potentially continuing the tradition of adopting sons. But Commodus seemed like on the outset as a fairly capable kid. So Aurelius gives him the nod as the heir. Wasn't Hercules a constellation at that point? Probably so, but that doesn't mean you can't be reincarnated. So his dad had spent 20 years fighting off the barbarians, and things had become peaceful again. And this is going to give Commodus a sort of false sense of security. You know, things are going great. That means we don't have to worry about stuff, right? Everything's going cool. We can just lay on the laurels and chill and party. And the peace on the border turns into him being really lazy as an emperor. And he doesn't really rule the empire so much as he kind of delegates rule of the empire. There are people inside of the Praetorian Guard that basically take over the day-to-day operations of the empire, while Commodus is sort of running around sounding like a toilet. It's not Commodus, it's Commodus. The accent's on the first syllable. But yeah, I give you, it does sound like a commode. He doesn't really rule that much. He doesn't really like the idea of ruling. He's known for it's not Leviosa. It's Leviosa. Yeah, so he's known for having a really bad, like, unhealthy appetite. He's known for sleeping really late in the day, having these giant parties, generally shirking his duties as emperor, not really caring very much about what's going on, much more interested in chasing down people that said mean things about him. He was very fond of trying to hear what people said about him, and then if he figured out that you said something bad about him, he really liked having you killed. And he might actually kill you himself, because it turns out that after a certain number of years, he really actually enjoys going and fighting in the Colosseum, because that's what Hercules does, right? He fights things. So he would go fight in the Colosseum. So that whole thing in Gladiator, where Joaquin Phoenix goes to fight Russell Crowe, that sort of thing was not implausible. Now, Russell Crowe's character is not an actual historical character. I want to make that clear. But Commodus going to fight people in the gladiatorial ring, that happened a lot. So essentially Dan Quayle, except for the killing part. Well, going further from that, he does like this idea of himself being Hercules reincarnated. And he basically starts a cult of himself and starts collecting worshipers that will follow him around and worship him at his command. This doesn't go over so great. He's just not a good leader. He doesn't have the qualities that make people good leaders. You do not volunteer for that group, yeah. The traveling around in the emperor's entourage while you view all of the provinces, that's an entourage I want to get in. The following the crazy guy around and worshiping him on command, that's not the entourage I want. There's also a reason why Commodus is not included in the 5 good emperors, because he's just not a good emperor. The worship thing gets a little out of hand. His excess is really what causes most people to hate him, though. There are reports at one time on a festival that he decided that he was going to bring in all of these animals. He liked importing wild, exotic animals from all over the empire. This is expensive, though, and let us remember, his father, Marcus Aurelius, had basically burned the entire coffers of Rome trying to protect Rome. And that the reason Commodus was able to frivolously rule is because his dad had done all of this work. But Commodus doesn't have the money to burn, yet he still burns the money. He spends more than Rome has bringing in all of these animals. Like, I want to kill 100 lions. And this is actually for real. Like, he actually ordered, like, he put in, like, I want 100 lions. Bring me 100 lions. And people are like, wait, what? Where do you just, like, do you go to Lions R Us and just get or is there, like, Lion Costco? Can you buy them in bulk and save? But he goes into the Colosseum and kills 100 lions, and people are supposed to cheer for him. And they're like, I mean, after you kill the 14th lion, there's not really much else you can do except keep killing 86 more lions. Do we need to keep cheering? Yeah, you do, because if you don't and he finds out you're groaning, he might kill you next. So, as you might expect, there are plots to kill him. The first plot doesn't go over so great. They try to poison his food, and while he's eating the food, he sort of, like, figures out that it tastes a little funny, so he goes and pukes all of it up and doesn't kill him. What they end up doing is finding one of his entourage. Does he face them one by one? If he faces them all, no. This was like one v Emperor. It wasn't all of them at once, and thus Peter was born. Yeah, Peter would have had a field day with this guy because he killed all sorts of stuff. Like, bring me the hippopotami or bring me the giraffes. Like, seriously, this is stuff that he wanted people to bring in so that he could either kill it himself or watch somebody else kill it. Massive exorbitancy. Anyway. Alright, bring in the dodos. PETA would have been fed to the lions. Correct. They should have just sent 25 lions at the same time and just let the lions take him to the next life. Well, not exactly what happens. There is a professional wrestler in his entourage because, let's be honest, if I had asked you to fill out the imperial entourage of a crazy guy, there's a fair chance that someone would have put a professional wrestler in the entourage. So yeah, they get there's a conspiracy put together that has the Praetorian Guard involved, but also some of the higher ranking nobles of the Roman Empire, and they convince this professional wrestler that Commodus needs to go. And so they all go to the bathhouse together, and while Commodus is in the bath, this professional wrestler puts him in a chokehold and kills him. Like, literally chokes him to death with the old, like, the sleeper hold or something. I don't think they actually describe the actual hold that he uses. It's not. We don't know if it's a triangle choke, or I don't know if anybody's an MMA fan or something like that. So we don't actually know 100% like the move that killed this guy. It wasn't like the sharpshooter or the stone cold stunner or something. But anyway, Commodus is dead. Now, like the leader of a country being associated with the WWE. Oh wow, like a leader that likes to sleep late and shirks his duties and wants to kill people that call him names and has a really bad appetite. What you gonna do when the bodyguard comes for you, brother? Right? No way, the Undertaker is that old. It's a tombstone pile driver in the baths, right? They came running in with a steel chair. Also, hey, Joey, and hey, Moose. I didn't say hey, Moose, when you came in. And I saw Martest pop in earlier as well. Hey, Martest. Good to see you, man. I apologize for not saying hey to everybody. I'm slacking on my hosting duties. All right, so this next bit is a bit of a bit. All right. Now you go, what are you typing all of these people's names for, Shane? What are you doing? This is too much at one time. Well, here's the thing. When... who guessed Narcissus in the bath with a chokehold? Vern, I love that you went and actually looked up the wrestler's name. I knew that. I just didn't figure it was important to add. But yeah, that's the guy's name. Just talk about. Anyway, okay. What happens next is absolute chaos. And below Rome here, you will see the name or the names of 5 different men. Because the next year is referred to as the year of 5 emperors. Now, this is not one calendar year, like from the beginning of 193 to the end of 194, or this is basically a 12-month period of time that covers 5 different emperors. And it's a mess. So here's what happens. So first off, the assassination goes down. Commodus is dead. This is the beginning of Real Housewives series, but with emperors. Kind of. So this guy is Pertinax. Now, Pertinax had been a big political to-do. He had been the governor of some provinces in Africa. He had been sort of one of the ringleaders of this coup to kill Commodus. I got to head to bed. Good to see you, Sci-Fi. Thanks for hanging out. Hope you have a good one. So, Pertinax becomes emperor. Pertinax doesn't last very long, because when it comes time to give the donation to the Praetorian Guard, oh well, he just doesn't want to give the donative. And there's a reason for that. The reason for that is Rome is broke. There's no money to give. But the Praetorian Guard was expecting, hey, we got a new emperor. Where's our bribe? Pertinax didn't have the bribe. What do you think happens to Pertinax? If you guessed, they chopped his head off. Well, now we're down to 4 emperors. So, who's this new guy? Didius Julianus. By the way, Pertinax lasts a couple of months. Not so long. Not the longest of rules. Then we get this guy. Didius Julianus. Now, this is an interesting situation, because it turns out that the Praetorian Guard would like a bribe. And this is kind of sad, but Pertinax's father-in-law and Didius Julianus get into a bidding war. And they're literally bidding on how much money they're going to give to the Praetorian Guard out of their own pocket to be made emperor. That's like 99 bottles of beer, but with 5 emperors. Pretty much. So Didius Julianus literally buys his way into being emperor with his own pocketbook. And that doesn't sit very well with a lot of other people, including the next guy on the list, Septimius Severus, who is this guy, and another guy named Pescennius Niger, who is this guy. So while Didius Julianus says, I am emperor, well, Septimius Severus and Pescennius Niger go, no, we're emperors. So here's the thing. Didius Julianus is sitting in Rome. Pescennius Niger was the governor of the Syria province over here, Septimius Severus was an army captain with a generalship in this region right here, which is called Pannonia. So who's closer? If you guessed Septimius Severus is closer, you're correct. He gets to Rome first. And his army and Didius Julianus's army gets into a fight, and Severus catches Rome, and he executes Didius Julianus. Sorry, you spent all that money for what? Get to be emperor for a few weeks? You could have just gone on vacation, dude. I mean, airfare's cheap right now. You could have pretty much gone anywhere you wanted to. But alas. So here's Septimius Severus and Pescennius Niger. All right, so they're both left. Hey, Atuna, what's up? So they're left. Septimius Severus versus Pescennius Niger. Now, Septimius Severus has a much bigger army and has consolidated most of Western Europe and Northern Africa. Did you make it in time for history? Yes, a little bit left. We are wrapping up. We are on what is referred to as the Year of 5 Emperors, which is pretty chaotic and lots of people get killed. So, Septimius Severus, Pescennius Niger, we're going to go at it. Now, Pescennius Niger, being over here in Syria, is right next door to Parthia. And he actually reaches out to the Parthians, and he's like, hey, you guys are having a bit of a bad go of stuff. If you put me on the throne, we'll have a lot better deal. And I'll deal with some stuff, and I'll give you some stuff back, and I'll make some assurances for you, and you can have some things that we took away from you. And the Parthians are like, what do we got to lose? That's going to come back to bite them, but it won't come back to bite them until next time we talk about them. So Septimius Severus, Pescennius Niger, they start going at each other. Pescennius Niger's army is wiped out. He tries to get away to Parthia. So like he gets wrecked and then actually tries to run away to Parthia, but gets caught along the way. And now he's dead. And so who's this Clodius Albinus guy? Well, Clodius Albinus was the leader of the Britannia legions. And he goes, you know what? They're all fighting over here. Ain't nobody really paying attention to over here. I'll just declare myself emperor. So he does. In 196, he declares himself emperor. But Septimius Severus is like, oh, crud. I've already killed 2 of these guys. Do I have to kill you too? And Clodius is like, I am the official emperor of Rome. So, of course, then we have to go have another big battle. Right around in here. Well, no. He was. He was proclaimed emperor and had coins minted in his name. Just because you didn't get to Rome doesn't mean you're not emperor. He had the title Imperator. He had people in the senatorial class on his side. He was making international deals for Rome. Self-proclaimed emperors? See, but you can say that you're emperor all that you want, but do you have people that will hail you Imperator? And this is actually a good moment to talk about this. Imperator is a title, right? Holder of Imperium. Imperium is the power of life and death in the Roman Empire, or the Roman Republic. And the military at this time understood that they were effectively the kingmakers. So you could say, I'm emperor all day long, but do you have armies that will agree with you? If you have armies that will agree with you and give you the title Imperator, you're an emperor. Now, do you control the entire empire? That's a different question. Do you have politicians inside of Rome that support your claim to be emperor? Sure. I declare Shane emperor of Mississippi. Dude, that would be so amazing. I would I would be the most loved and the most hated emperor of Mississippi ever. I mean, I'd be the only emperor of Mississippi ever, and they'd probably uh, they would probably come after me with pitchforks. Uh, you and what army? Right. So you could declare me emperor all day long, but do I have? You have my sword. I have an army of one. My wife might be small, but she's ferocious. All right. Well, as much as I would love Imperator, feared benevolent emperor, and my axe. Somebody's got to be Gimli here, right? Anyway, there's a big battle between the forces of Septimius Severus and Clodius. Oh, I didn't show you Clodius Albinius. He looks like this. Bum, ba, bum. This is Clodius Albinus. Or Clodius the White, by the way. Yeah, anyway, Clodius doesn't make it. Septimius Severus comes out in 197 as the sole emperor of Rome, and he is going to begin what is referred to as the Severan dynasty, which is going to be sort of the last real gasp of amazingness before a really, really horrible time for Rome. The 3rd century for Rome is the pits. When we get to come back to Rome, we will talk about the crisis of the 3rd century, where there are 50 emperors in as many years, and only 2 of them die from natural causes. The rest of them are killed or assassinated, or killed in battle or assassinated. Yep. Septimius Severus. His dynasty makes a lot of changes in Rome. A lot of changes. Well, when in Rome, right? Okie dokie. Well, ladies and gents, that is all that I had prepared for the night. And I would like to note, perhaps miraculously, or perhaps because of technical issues, we didn't blue screen tonight. So we made it all the way through without the stream crashing, which is amazing. Yeah, so thank you all very much. We don't have to be done yet, though. If anybody has... Is Septimius Latin for Snape? No, it isn't. If anybody has any points that they would like to redeem, or if anybody has any questions about this material, or any sort of adding things, or anything like that, anything at all, if you want to chat about some stuff, if you were able to travel back in time to Rome, how well would you be able to communicate with them? Fairly well. I have a passable conversational understanding of Latin. What would probably be funny is that we don't actually know 100% for certain how they pronounced some things. Anybody that teaches you Latin now will tell you, here's how this is pronounced. That might be how the Catholic Church pronounces it now. And that might be how medieval people pronounced it. But is that how the ancient Romans pronounced it? That's a trickier, sticky wicket. We're not 100% sure. And anybody that tells you, we know concrete, definitely, this is how you pronounce every single letter in Latin, they're not being honest with you. Tuna, do you have anything specifically in the news that you would like to talk about? Hey, Attendarios. Good to see you. And while Tuna is answering that, I will call the puppy. Oh, I am muted. I apologize. Hey, come see me. Oh, come here. No, here. Why don't you? Come here. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come here. I was commenting on the puppy jowls. Do you want to come up on this side? Would you rather come up over here because it doesn't have the fan? Come on. Come on. It's okay. Come on. Hey, come see. Come on. There you go. Oh, you want your chicken? Arr. 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 Want the squeakers? Arr. Are you ready to go now? I'm gonna be itchy. You're gonna go see Brittany? You take your toy and go see Brittany? You can go see Brittany, it's okay. Oh, the puppy. All right, let's see. You have nothing with Latin and would get stabbed on the street or made a slave. Oh, Figment. They would probably think modern Latin speakers were weird from somewhere else. Right. They would probably think I had some odd accent. Afghanistan is interesting, but there's a lot of going on that isn't getting as much coverage as needed. You thought she was already there with you trying to get it. No. She had already gone back up front and slept on the couch. And gone to sleep on the couch. Oh yes, we can fill up the puppy of war emotes. She's such a mess. Let's see. I don't know. What do we want to talk about? If you don't want to talk about Afghanistan, that was probably my go-to. We could do some good news. We could talk about some good news. How about that? So, there is a particular group of scientists in Australia, and I'll mention. I'll do the good news. Let's do the bad news first, and then we'll do the good news. Yeah, so recently, China has decided effectively that all technology that comes into China or comes out of China effectively gets controlled by their government. And I know that some people will be like, well, wasn't it always that way? Well, they have gone a little bit above and beyond even what they had been doing previously. And this is being done through expansion of Chinese official government propaganda. So, and I'll give you a great example of this. I was just talking with the mods on the channel here earlier today, and Mac in a lab coat shared that China has turned even the weird little niche, and I shouldn't say weird, even the tiniest little niche news outlets into propaganda machines. Mac in a lab coat is a big fan of the language Esperanto. We won't go into the whole backstory of Esperanto, but China has a fairly sizable, in comparison, Esperanto community and had an Esperanto news outlet. But recently, in this big crackdown on tech and tech-related materials, even the Esperanto news network, I don't know exactly what it's called in China, has started accepting and running the pro-government propaganda stuff. This is also responsible for the big crackdown that China made and has been making on cryptocurrency mining. Of course, cryptocurrency mining is one of the big things that a lot of places are going, or a lot of people are getting into now because of the rise in cryptocurrencies and things like that. But China's cracked down on that really, really hard. Do we know for sure that Jack Ma is alive? So Jack Ma is the owner of a really, really big company called Alibaba. Alibaba is effectively the Chinese version of Amazon. Now, there's a functional version of Amazon in China, but Alibaba is the big thing. Jack Ma has been under a lot of pressure because he has been a fairly open vocal critic against some of these practices, and has basically stated, to his credit, that a lot of the Chinese practices are actually going to curtail growth in the tech sectors as they crack down on things. And he has been put under house arrest or actually been arrested. I don't know right now if I could say for certain that I know he's alive. We don't know. I know that he had been under house arrest for a really, really long time. And a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, he made a public appearance, but I can't say anything for right now. I just don't know. And I'm not trying to be vague, I don't know. I just functionally don't know. What does that mean for tech that is made in China? Well, this is sort of tied into the issues that the world is having right now with shortages of technology components. And China is basically going to try to and they've always put themselves at the front of their own business to a certain extent, but it's the cut down and the shrinkage of the production for some of these computer parts are now so broad that it's even hurting China's own sort of deck stacked against everybody else situation. So they're cracking down even more. And we don't know what this is really going to do. I really couldn't guess too much because Chinese government has become a little bit unpredictable. This is partially because of their economic contraction. Last year in 2020, and the beginning of this year in 2021, there were most of the big economies of the world that found themselves in an economic downturn, right? There were lockdowns. There was not as much moving around. China's bailout package for their own citizens was effectively nil, right? So a lot of people criticize the U.S., rightly or wrongly, is up to you, for what some people considered a tepid response in comparison to other countries' bailout packages of their middle and lower classes. China's response was, we're protecting our government infrastructure, and the big businesses and everybody else can just die. Their economic downturn was pretty severe. They did not grow nearly as fast as projected. And despite the fact that Xi Jinping right now is the premier of China, the guy that's the head of the Communist Party in China, despite the fact that he likes to portray himself as ultimately invincible, he is on thinner ice than he wants anybody to understand. This has hurt China. And the tariff situation that began under the Trump presidency hurt China. The trade downturn globally that came from COVID has hurt China. And them flexing right now is potentially posturing, but it could also preface or presage a pretty serious power struggle. I don't know. The problem with China is that you sometimes don't know what is happening until after it's done and the dust settles. And then people that know how to look into the dust can figure out what happened. So we don't know. We don't know. What's the closest historical reference to how controlling China is? Oh, Stalinist Russia. Um, the vast majority of people in China are incredibly poor peasants. Now, that has changed greatly since the 90s. China's economics have increased the standard of living for a lot of people in China pretty substantially. But let's be honest and say that if you are literally making no money and living hand to mouth, and you go from basically making no money to making $1,000 a year, yeah, that's bigger and that's better. But is that a sustainable life? Are you meeting your needs? Are you, able to provide for your family? And one of the reasons that China moves populations around so much is to mask how bad its population is actually hurting. Uh, there are parts of China, especially rural parts of China, that are out in the region. Here, let me turn the borders on. So, like, the further away you get into this part of China, the more likely you are to be a dirt poor peasant. And I'm not trying to say that insultingly, it's just the truth. Uh, and one of the reasons why this region right here is becoming such a target for the Chinese is that area is amongst one of the most poor areas of China, and it has a substantial Muslim population. These are the Uyghurs, if you've heard about how China is literally forcing them to go through re-education camps and brainwashing or killing them. Taiwan enters chat. China, me? I'm sorry. Hey, Shiggy, good to see you. Taiwan is in a sticky situation. Taiwan is its own country until China doesn't want it to be. I don't know. I have thoughts on China, but I don't know if I should share them because they're pretty blunt. Basically, China understands that it is the economic powerhouse that it is, and it's holding people hostage internationally. You can't speak out about China because they'll take their money away from you. And a big chunk of the countries of the world and a big chunk of the businesses in the world would rather have money than stand up for human rights. And I'll just say it like that. Because it's the truth. When you have John Cena apologizing profusely and almost crying because he offhandedly mentioned that Taiwan is a country, because he knows that all of the movies that he stars in would no longer be able to be carried in China, and the WWE would no longer have television rights for China. Yeah, that's exactly why he went online and apologized. Yeah, the NFL just bending over backwards. Movie theaters, movie producers bending over backwards. Bad guys can't be Chinese anymore. They have to be, vaguely Asian or somebody else. It's all for the money. It's really all that it is. But that's enough about the bad news. Let's talk about the good news. So, in Australia, where everything is trying to kill you, there is a particular type of tarantula. And this particular type of tarantula is called a funnel web spider. And these particular scientists were studying the funnel web spider venom. And they turned up this interesting idea, or this particular lab analysis of the venom, and they found that the venom of this particular funnel web spider could potentially basically stop people from having a heart attack if they were in the process of having a heart attack. So when you have a heart attack, there's particular chemicals that get released into your bloodstream. And the longer they stay there, the more damage they can do to your body. But it turns out that if their research is accurate, they might be able to take this venom from this funnel web spider and develop a drug that could be given to people either while they're having a heart attack or right after they are having a heart, or right after they have had a heart attack, to significantly or potentially significantly decrease the lasting and long-term effects of that heart attack. So that's a pretty big deal. And as frequently as heart attacks take people away from us, that could be a life-saving treatment. So there's some good news for you. Australia, where everything's trying to kill you, maybe the funnel web spider isn't trying to kill you directly. Well, I mean, maybe it is, but if you catch the funnel web spider and then pull the molecules out of it that make this particular thing happen, it might actually help you. Thanks, Australia! But speaking of those poor regions, it's interesting since China has this very expansive borders that are not internationally recognized. Correct. So spiders try to kill you so hard that it can save your life. Heart attack? Crikey, toss a spider on him! Right? Anybody got a funnel web spider just sort of sitting around? Why not? Why not just chuck it on somebody? I apologize. I'll start talking and my nose starts itching. I don't know why it is, but man, my nose just goes crazy sometimes when I stream. All right. So I think that it is about that time. And I think it is time to go do a bit of raiding. So I'm going to look to see who's on, but I'm also going to see if we can maybe raid somebody new. So I'm going to do a search for educational and see who is around. Is this a geologist? Oh, yes. Okay, so we're going to go raid a geologist. Awesome. Now, I will be honest. I don't know why this thing is playing so loudly. I was trying to get to... Okay, so I don't know exactly what's going on. I think they're watching some kind of travel hack video. Why not? If they're claiming to be a geologist and they're claiming to have to be an educational stream and being a geologist in person, I think that's going to qualify. I think we're going to go raid a geology stream. I will note, I do not know who this person is. I have never been to this person's chat before. I am going to also say that I don't know what this is going to be like. However, we're going to give it a shot. So, it wants to kill you to survive the heart attack so it can kill you itself. There we go. Remain calm or the electrical eel will try to defibrillate you. Rocket Sage. Yes, we're going to go raid Rocket Sage. So, again, don't know who this is. Don't know what we're getting ourselves into. But I suspect it'll be fun. So, yeah. Our battle cry when we go in is adventure. And if you have any of those lovely adventure hat emotes, you can throw those into the chat. Thank you all so very much. I appreciate everybody hanging out tonight. Thanks for all the good chat and all the questions. Yeah, so we're going to go raid Rocket Sage. And I hope everybody has a good one. I will see you next sometime soon. We'll be building some Gundam stuff. Maybe tomorrow, maybe Saturday or Sunday. I'm not sure. But soon. Next scheduled adventure in history is next Thursday, where we're going to be talking about some Central American kingdoms in the 2nd century. Promises to be an interesting and fun time, as always. But until then, see ya. Take it easy. I hope you have a great weekend. So, bye, everybody.